Hi, I'm Jonathan Paula, and welcome to the fourth and final day of the third annual Inside Jam, a week-long social media celebration celebrating enterprise tech, hosted by Solutions Review. Today's focus has been on business intelligence, and for the next hour during our last panel this week, we're going to have a discussion with 6 industry experts on the topic of the evolution of BI and data analytics software. I'm going to bring in these guys now. LSP, Charles, David, Roman, Sean, and Shri. Welcome to the program. It is great to have you here. I'm excited to get this topic underway. Now, Dave, you've graciously agreed to moderate, so I'm going to let you sort of start off the introductions. Just name, title, company, and maybe a brief 30 seconds or so on your history in this space or what you'd like to talk about today. And good luck, gentlemen. Looking forward to the
Great.
chat.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. So hi, everyone. I'm Dave Mariani. I'm the CTO and co-founder of AtScale. My experience has been in analytics and big data for, gosh, the past 20 years now. At Yahoo, I ran analytics there and suffered a lot of the paper cuts and the dark side of self-service analytics. And so sought to improve that and create self-service analytics with guardrails using a semantic layer. So I'm really excited to be with the group of folks here and to moderate the discussion. So we have a lot of great stuff to talk about. Shri, how about you?
Hey, a very good morning to all of you. Shri Bhagavan. I am the Director of Data Science and Advanced Analytics at Teradata. I've been in the advanced analytics space for about 20 plus years. I spent a significant portion of my initial career in software development, actually developing analytic applications for both reporting as well as large-scale statistical applications, and then progressively moved on to manage analytics programs in financial services, healthcare, government services, and so on, and then moved into the software side. I've been in Teradata for 9 years. So happy to be here, Dave and John. Thanks very much for hosting this.
How about you, Sean?
Sean Rogers. I'm Vice President of Analytics Strategy at TIPCO, and I too have been in the industry for longer than I care to recall. Some of you listening in may have seen my original foray into our industry through a print publication called Data Management Review that many people read for many years in our industry, and I was one of the co-founders of that publication. I've been an industry analyst for a handful of years, and now I run a thought leadership team inside of TIPCO, which is unique. Not product evangelists, more like an internal analyst group that has a point of view on the industry and shares it in a public-facing way. So it's cool to be here and nice to see all of you.
Very, very cool. LSP, we can't see you, but we hopefully can hear you. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks, John and everybody. It's a pleasure to meet you all on this panel. I am the head evangelist for Zoho Analytics. It's a self-service BI and analytics platform from Zoho. Been in the software space for over 20 years, and a good part of that was spent in telco and real-time analytics, but now mostly into the business analytics space. That's what I do for Zoho now.
Great. So Roman, you're up.
Hi, Roman Stanek, founder, CEO of Good Data. My background is a little non-traditional for data. I actually come from service-oriented architecture, cloud background. So I feel like I'm in a perfect place at the right time with my background in data in the cloud today. And again, I'm the founder of CEO of Good Data, and I'm excited about to talk about the future of analytics and BI.
Thanks, Roman. And finally, Charles.
Yes, hi, I'm Charles, and I am the CEO and CPO of Toucan. So Toucan is a guided business analytics solution that I started nearly 10 years ago. So maybe I'm the youngest here, even with 10 years in the industry. So very, very happy to speak today, to speak about the future of BI and analytics. And I'm very pleased to see such a wonderful panel. And I'm sorry for my kid that's behind. We had like early dismissal today. So
I love it. Love it working from home. That's how it is.
Yeah.
So thanks, Charles, and thanks everybody for joining. So we have some great topics to chat about today. And so I'll just kick it off with sort of the first topic we can sort of deep dive on. And that's about, what is the biggest innovation happening in BI and analytics and software right now. So I'd love to hear from the team here about what do you think the biggest innovation is. Sean, how about you start? You're the big thinker here.
There's so many things that you can list, and I think the foundational aspect is that most everybody's kind of understanding that analytics, business intelligence, insight into data, driving your business with data is a must-have. It's no longer an aspirational thing. It's really become table stakes. So for me, you could list a bunch of things that are driving it. I think the democratization of access is still really interesting and still really driving an awful lot of use. And I think that reuse, modularity, reusable models, reusable insights, so that you get continuity and consistency of insight across your organization, it's really becoming important. So, but that gets back to how many people can I put analytics in the hands of? How many people can I empower to make good decisions inside of my enterprise? And I really do think that that's part of it, right? Is how do we go faster? How do we scale? And how do we keep things consistent? And modularity and reuse is certainly in a cornerstone of that, I think.
Yeah, I love the reuse part of it. Look, it's like I hear a lot from our customers about analytics being for everyone. Not just a data scientist, not just a data engineer, not just an analytics guru or ninja. That's super important to be able to make data accessible to everyone. Sri, what do you think? What do you think about this topic?
I almost want to say that Sean stole the words out of my mouth, but he said it far better than I could. The two things I will harp on, one is, of course, the ability to collaborate across different personas. It really makes a big difference, particularly as I speak to customers on a regular basis. Gone are the days when analytics is done only by those 4.5 people who have actually been trained in statistics. Now, everybody in the organization needs to be data-driven, which means the collaborative aspect of BI and analytics is significantly important, number one. Number two, the reuse part of it is extremely important. I'll give you an example. One of the big things that happens with a lot of analytics tools, no surprise here, is a lot of machine learning kind of algorithmic applications. Now, the thing about machine learning is that as you create these complex data pipelines or analytics pipelines, if you will, starting all the way from data access, ingestion, data preparation, data cleansing, to model building, model operationalization and whatnot, you need to have these features be created. So these are feature engineering tasks that happen. But the thing is, once features are created and a data scientist creates them and then she hits a lottery and moves to Cancun, the next person who comes along doesn't quite know how these features are created, so which means you need repeatability. So an enterprise feature store is a very singular component, and one of the things that is very important in the kinds of BI and analytics tools that are being developed today, as an example, right? So these are some of the innovations that we're seeing quite a bit of in the industry today.
Yeah, hearing a lot about feature stores. Sometimes they call them metric stores. We call it a semantic layer. So there's a lot of different words for driving that reuse and that collaboration for sure. LSP, what's your thoughts on this?
Dave, with Sri and Sean going at it, it's game over. What can we add to that, what they have said? I mean, beautifully articulated. But what I would probably add to this is the needle of democratization has been pushed pretty extensively by the use and adoption of AI and ML within the context of analytics layer. Now, you can basically have the person who's taking a call, let's say the sales agent who wants to make a decision at the end of the month, whether he wants to give someone a discount or not. It's no longer the VP or the head of sales trying to make that decision, pushing it to that level, giving them the metrics that they need to do the job that they need to do more effectively. No longer it's about systems of records, it's about systems of insights that basically matters today. And I think that's where we are heading. And that is by far, all of us have been in this industry for a long time, trying to push the boundaries. And even today, less than 40% of the business users are insights driven. So it's still a huge market, but then we are definitely helped by the adoption of AI and ML and then pushing the boundaries. So that is by far the biggest innovation. We have come from the reporting modules to self-service, all about drag and drop of creation of reports and dashboards. Now it's all about business metrics being constantly monitored, where a lot of people have talked about dashboards being dead, but dashboards are more alive now with KPI monitoring and so on. So definitely we are pushing the boundaries, and then the technologies are helping us, and everybody is in a data warehouse today. Everybody is dealing with, on average, 100 apps are being used by a business. So there is constant amount of data that everybody is looking at, and then not having the insights, it's just that you're going to be blindsided. So definitely a big topic, definitely innovation that has helped us to push the boundaries of democratization is around, in my mind, is around AI and ML that's helping us to do that more effectively.
Yeah, we're gonna dive deeper and later on in the discussion about just the convergence of AI and BI and what that means and what that might look like. But before we jump there, all the good stuff. Roman, you've been at this longer than I have, and you've been doing it all in the cloud long before anybody thought the cloud was the place to put your data. So, what's your view about innovation and what's happening in our space?
You're on mute, Roman.
Yes, I did have to. I started a while ago. And anyway, so before I actually talk about the innovation, I actually want to spend a minute on where do we come from, And the way I see analytics 10 years ago is that it's like a red-headed stepchild of operational systems. That analytics was never the first, kind of treated at the same level. And so I see analytics almost like an island, disconnected from the right processes, disconnected from the right kind of best practices in a company. And now you see that kind of analytics is kind of being broken apart by data ops and different types of data pipelines and again, cloud data warehouses. And so what used to be analytics and BI that has now is kind of evolving and getting essentially smaller and more integrated into the overall IT environment. And so I don't think it will be called BI in the future. It's going to be some sort of an insight consumption layer that will be at the level of a data warehouse or data integration and so on. But, BI in the past was end-to-end from connectors to in-memory analytics, visualization, and it's now being kind of broken apart into small pieces. And that consumption layer will be built around ability to have multimodal consumption and reuse and semantic model and metric store, all of that. But it will have to be approached differently. It cannot be approached as a desktop application that people just copy data into. It has to become like a equal citizen of the IT environment. And that was not the case 5 years ago or 10 years ago when BI was treated again as something that people in finance do.
Yeah, totally. That's and we're seeing that change beneath our feet. It's like I wanted to dig a little bit deeper here with because BI is changing, especially with AI and ML. Things seem to be merging. It seems like maybe we're seeing where machine learning, just like in analytics in the beginning, was the it was the domain of an expert, somebody who could understand data and data structures to be able to actually answer the question for other people. It seems like data science began that way, where you have PhDs and people who can have a PhD and actually know how to wrangle data, and it seems like maybe that's moving the same direction that BI did. So Charles, what do you think about what you're seeing in the market when it comes to AI and BI and how they're developing separately, together, merging? What do you think?
Yeah, and I would agree with just what Roman said, is that before I'd say until soon, it was like a all-in-one BI platform doing end-to-end from storage to manipulation, connectivity, and restitution. Now, what's emerging is that what Gartner and Forrester call the BI fabric concept, where I would say each of the solution need to find where their strength is And what you see between data science and BI is that the BI science will be much more handled to prepare the data, to construct models, to build that catalog of insight, and then it has to operate very well with multiple visualization layer, consumption layer, API layer. So what we see is that it's blending. It's not you have data science platform and then you have BI platform and then you have cloud data warehouse, and then so all these things are not isolated anymore. All these things live in a cloud. So in and even multi-cloud environments, corporation choose one or two cloud environment, they store their data there, and then they build that BI fabric where they select for each of the step of the value chain of the data, one or two providers, and build that ecosystem with automatic API just to for the data to flow from one step to another step, so that it's very like Sean said, reusable, composable, and at the end being able to be used by agile citizen. So that's another trend we see a lot is the agile citizen development, also popularized by Gartner. What has been said is that we see more and more people without those PhD just coming out of college and sometimes undergrad that will make today what PhD did like 5 years ago. So and that's the consumerization trend we see, that simplification trend that we see.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I would just add
go ahead,
one.
Sean.
Yeah, to build on what Roman was saying, a different word for it is everything old is new again, in the sense that how we're connecting the data, how we're orchestrating or unifying it, how we're using it to predict or to influence our decisioning, it gets back to the data quite often. And I think everybody's made a good point. How we attack that universe kind of moves around a little bit. We've all been in the industry long enough to know and heard the comment that Hadoop will solve every problem ever known to mankind. And we all went, well, there's a place for it. And there's the same thing for ML and AI. And there's the same thing for, all of the technologies here. I think what's really changed is that people are a bit more accepting that one doesn't always solve everything, and actually having the right lineup. And Charles, I think you were kind of touching on this, that's how you get to the point where you can innovate and be competitive with Insight, is if you have the right universe set up around you. So
the right
a lot of it's old stuff, Dave, stuff we were, MDM and data quality and data, all of this stuff has been around a long time. And I think people understand that they need to address it if they really want to go forward.
Well, you know what makes me, what I hear is like old is new again. It's like best of breed versus integration, right? And we're in a cloud world where services are proliferating. So do you guys all think that we're back in a best of breed and assemble it yourself, or what's the role for verticalized applications that sort of do it all together in an integrated form versus people putting it together themselves?
I would say it depends on the maturity of the organization. I believe that companies that are very low maturity will still start with the all-in-one solution, the very verticalized, but then quickly move to a more like best of breed, because as we are progressing, all the industry is progressing and moving forward. We see the need of interoperability. We see the need just to connect to any type of system, and because in corporation, people, the buyers see the value of having to choose a la carte the best of breed. That comes with sometimes with some overhead. That's why not everybody will do it, especially at the beginning. But once people are much more mature in their needs, in how they operate, what's the strength they're looking for, what's the weaknesses of a solution, they will move from an all-in-one integrated, I would say, solution to a more diversified, best of breed approach.
I don't think that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually the choice between all-in-one and best of breed. I actually think the choice is between vertically integrated cloud, where you find all of the services from one provider, and kind of a, and best of breed. So it's not necessary. I would not call AWS all in one. It's kind of a hairball of functionality, but you can find anything there, and that's going to be for all of us and for everyone. There will essentially be 6 main competitors that will have, again, not all in one. It will be kind of vertically integrated stack. All of the key cloud vendors plus maybe IBM, maybe Oracle, and that's the competition for all of us. How do we actually kind of define the value of an independent ISV in that environment where you can get everything from your preferred cloud vendor?
Yeah, that's a good point, Sri. What do you think about it, Sri?
Then again, there are a lot of customers that I speak to who don't want to get it from their preferred cloud vendor because they have certain niche solutions to go after. For instance, certain customers would prefer H2O's auto ML capabilities because that's something which they've either invested in or they have people who've come from that area who actually want to be able to use this thing. So the idea is, I believe, all the time for us as vendors to create this ecosystem extensibility, which is to create this sort of a platform which allows us to plug and play with different solutions, right? The SageMakers of the world, the H2Os of the world, and Databricks of the world, and so on and so forth. What that does, which I've seen quite a bit, is that it takes advantage of the existing investments that customers have made in those products. Some of those investments, perhaps, are made because of resume effects, because, there's a data scientist who actually wants, higher pay, and therefore they've invested in certain solutions and whatnot, or sometimes it's pretty legitimate depending on the business outcomes that they're trying to register. Regardless of what the motivations are, as long as there's a platform that can plug into these various solutions and then can afford consumers to be able to take advantage of existing investment, that is something which we have seen taken on a tremendous amount of traction in the industry. And that's the approach that we've taken as a company as well, and what our customers would like to see going forward.
Yeah, I've definitely seen our customers struggle with, like a Google BigQuery, for example, it runs on GCP and that's it. And so some of the other options like in Teradata, right? The fact you can run on multiple clouds does give customers the flexibility of to work in a multi-cloud world. I was just had dinner with a CIO of a major bank last night, and I asked him the question is, are we in a multi-cloud world? And he's like, of course we're in a multi-cloud world. And that's someone coming from commercial banking, which were tiptoed into the cloud. So I definitely think that's a consideration to make sure these tools can run across different clouds. LSP, looks like you have an opinion on this too.
Yeah, I know. Anecdotally speaking, in the context of best of breed versus building things yourself, I think we have seen, similar to what Sri had said earlier and what he has seen, in the consumption of the business applications that Zoho is in. What we have seen is, if they're within the ecosystem, they're happy with what they have. At the same time, having the ability to connect to other business applications, we see that on a daily basis. I mean, talking to customers, talking to everyone out there, what we see is they want a platform that allows them and gives them the flexibility. We even get a lot of traction in the embedded space as well. So they want a platform that can allow them to have that flexibility, the self-service capability, the embedded capability. There is a market there where the best of breed will thrive pretty much. Again, I would agree with Charles in that it depends on the maturity and how complex your workflows are becoming and how agile as a company you are, how fast are you moving, and how do you respond to those needs within your business to make that decision. So I think there's two sides to it. There's still, I don't think either way, an opinion is something that can be had at this point, because businesses, depending on the type of business, depending on how nimble they are, they're making the choices. And then what has happened with analytics specifically is we're also seeing departments are taking decisions. It's no longer a central IT that's saying, hey, you got to go with this particular analytics solution or BI solution. You're looking at the sales department going with a vendor who has sales metrics and sales analytics capability, marketing analytics capability. It is still there. You're still seeing those vertical data models on which they do analysis. That still has currency in the market because businesses are looking for it. It's it's a very challenging space overall. It's not something that I have an opinion on a strong basis saying it's one way or the other. I think it's market is deciding to go both ways.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned was of the importance of embedded analytics, and that was sort of one of the topics I wanted us to drill down on today, because I'm definitely seeing it out there. It's not just the analysts talking about it. There's a lot of people talking about the importance of embedded analytics and getting beyond just the dashboard and use analytics into operational systems and the like. So what's your view of embedded analytics? Why are we seeing it rise to the occasion?
Because it cannot. I mean, analytics cannot be done in isolation anymore. I think that the time of ingesting data, having the analysts do the analysis and share the data, the dashboards with you, I think we're past that point now. Now people want to take within the systems of record, whether you're in a CRM or a help desk or ticketing system or whatever application you are, they want to get their insights, they want to take their actions within the context of that application. They don't want to be jumping around multiple applications to get to make decisions. It's just basically a lag that you don't want, right? And that's where I think there are a lot of choices out there, and then we're seeing this whole traction even within the context of our own offering, a lot of embedding happening. And ISVs are basically looking at doing it with the application. And then you're also within the context of an organization. I call this internal embedded analytics, something along those lines, for a lack of a better term. But then you have organizations that are trying to consolidate and get all the insights within one system and then get it within the organization rather than having 10 different applications do it for you. So embedding within the organization and also embedded in the context of business applications is what you're seeing, and rightfully so. You don't want to be jumping around and have lags.
You said my two favorite words about embedded. It's about time to decision and context. And embedded hits both of those check marks hugely. It's there's a lot of analytics, a lot of data-driven insight that we don't need to run massive queries and all kinds of sort of data. We can put them and embed them in applications and in front of the right individual within our organization to make concise and fast conversation decisions. I gave an example in something I wrote years ago. I said, wouldn't it be interesting if embedded analytics included social data? So while I might be at an airport blowing some steam about a carrier who's left me high and dry in some city, that when I reach out to the customer service line, embedded in that console or embedded in their view of me, they get a live feed of my socials so that they can begin the conversation with, oh, hi, Mr. Rogers, I see you're stuck in Chicago today. I'm very sorry, versus the standard, how can I help you? It's those edges that make customer interactions more sophisticated and more timely. And I think embedded analytics allows people to do business at the speed of their business, right? As fast as they need to. And if embedded's not part of your strategy, I think you're missing a huge opportunity. LSP, I completely agree with what you're talking about. It's context, situation, and timing.
I think there's another advantage if you look at it from the standpoint of people who are actually using the applications, right? To use a BI tool over time, yes, using a BI tool has actually gotten better. User interfaces are much more human factor centric. They're much more logical. The UX is just fantastic. However, there is still a learning curve associated with BI tool usage, BI solutions usage, and analytics usage. However, on the other hand, applications, for instance, Salesforce, this is something which a lot of our folks have been using forever. You're very familiar with it. You know the contours of Salesforce. You know how it behaves. Now, to embed analytics and insights directly in Salesforce shortens the time significantly. Now you don't have to make all those investments in a separate BI solution. Not to mention the fact that both LSP and Sean, you said an absolutely true statement, which is the time to insights is significantly reduced. Lag is not there anymore as much as it used to be the case. However small or large it may have been the case of a separate, hermetically sealed BI tool usage. So the familiarity with an application and embedding analytics on top of the application is a double whammy. It's a fantastic thing. I see more of it happening over time.
Yeah, when I think of when I think most people think of embedded analytics, they think about the actual BI tool being embedded in another application, like a chart or table or like. But we have a customer who's is a Fortune 100 retailer in home improvement, and they embedded gross margin by product by store. And I'm like, it's like, why is that hard? It's like, you can't believe how hard it is to calculate. So it's about like simplicity and consistency. And that one calculation they wrapped an API around is being used by 7 different applications. And it's just as simple as a single calculation. So it's kind of crazy. Roman, you're an expert in this area, I think. So what do you have to say about what's happening with embedded analytics?
I think that's the most confusing thing about embedded analytics is that it's not analytics embedded in applications. It's a different animal. It's not, again, you don't take your traditional dashboard and you embed it, in some sort of iframe. That's the most confusing thing about it is that the example you use, for me to actually have all of these metrics in real time calculated for all of the stores and so on, I just, and I need scale, I need testing, I need compliance, and so many things that, again, when I go back to what I said about BI 10 years ago, none of it was it was not one of the requirements for analytics. My favorite kind of story of embedded analytics is my meeting with a major CIO of a major company, where we were reviewing good data SLAs because they actually run all of the data portals and so on good data. And he wanted to know kind of how much they spend on us. So he called in some analyst who was using Tableau, and the analyst said, I cannot provide you these metrics. The Tableau server is down for the last 24 hours. And yet, we have like a sub-minute SLAs, and we would have to pay a month's back if he were kind of 2 minutes down and so on. So that's what I'm talking about. It's not traditional dashboard embedded in some sort of application. It actually has fundamentally different set of requirements. And I think Charles said that, for composability, for integration with application, for scale, for all of this. And it is a different animal. And that's why it's that's why I'm not talking about BI as kind of a evolution. I'm talking about this kind of consumption layer that can provide analytics to hundreds of thousands of people at real time, securely, and so on and so on. It is a different animal.
And what you say without saying it, Roman, regarding embedded analytics, is that everybody, every company, every product at some point needs to do embedded analytics, but they can build them by themselves. It's way too complex the way data now operates, all the things that needs to be done. And companies, corporates need to rely on solutions like yours, like ours, or like Zoho to provide and operate those building blocks in terms of analytics. Even if you go beyond just a chart, or if you want to provide scalability, if you want to provide security, governance, all of those things, this is a product. And no, like car makers don't make the tires, they don't make the windshield, they just buy and assemble. For me, it's the same in our industry. People that build products, verticalized product, they need to buy the core components, and embedded analytics is one of them from I would say leaders.
What's we're talking about some pretty big concepts here, but what just from practical advice, for the audience out there who's looking to, what is embedded analytics? How can I use it? So team, what would you guys recommend to the audience in terms of how they, the kind of tools, the kinds of things they use, the principles they look for to make sure that they can drive analytics, not just in BI tools, not just really in a Jupyter notebook, but beyond that, and make it more pervasive through the enterprise? What would be your advice?
I would say first, know your need and your audience, because there is not only one need. So I would say, as a product managers here, you should understand what you need, what you want to build, what's your customers want. So Shri mentioned a few times that he is a direct contact with customers. So very important to understand your customers, how they want to use, manipulate your product. And based on that, maybe the Jupyter Notebook is the right way to go. There is no one recommendation, I would say. But first, I would say know your audience, know what's one of the most important aspects is what's the technicity, the maturity in terms of data and analytics of your audience. Are there very non-technical users, operators on the field in car dealerships, or are there experienced data analysts or skilled data enthusiasts? So because this is a whole spectrum, and depending on who you're serving, who you are serving, yes, you will choose a much different solution.
Left to me, I'll go with the Jupyter Notebook all the time, but that's a different story altogether. But I think Roman made an exceptional point, right? Which is, we just can't look at embedded analytics as taking existing dashboards and just plugging it onto an application. That's not the way it works, obviously. I think one of the key things for us to worry about, for instance, is the user experience that a customer is used to for, let's say, for example, any focal CRM application. There are certain things that she or he does within the CRM application that they're very used to. There's a certain madness in terms of the screens they go after and so on. So when you talk about embedded analytics, you better take into consideration those kinds of workflows that are embedded into that particular application. Because if you don't, then the analytics that you're embedding into it may not be optimally used by the consumer, right? So, which means you have to worry about the use case, the business outcomes, the UX of that particular tool into which you're embedding the analytics and so on. So these are, top line considerations that need to happen before embarking into that project.
Yeah, my recommendation: go to application developers, not to your BI people for that selection. Okay. It's BI people don't understand scale, don't understand anything that has to do with application development and reliability and security and so on. That's BI is nice to have, but not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are we at the part where we can start arguing yet? Or
I speak more in the developer conferences than at BI conferences these days. But
Roman and I've been debating each other for 20 years, so I think he was taking a poke at me. But yeah, well, I hear what you're saying.
What's your response to
excluding your BI team? We could have another program about why that was wrong insight, but I get where you're going, Roman. I really do. It's a complex thing, and quite often selection and how you find the right vendor, one excludes the other, and that's always problematic. And that would really be my point, would be as excluding your BI team, I don't think is wise. I think including the people that Roman just mentioned is wise. And I think both teams have to collaborate. I think there was too much of the exclusion stuff early on. We were talking about the older or more traditional days of BI. And I was thinking, my first BI tool came on 14 disks from Cognos. I think it was PowerPlay, And I called Rob Ash, who I think at the time was the CEO of Cognos, and I said, hey, can I get a copy of the software? I have a problem. And we worked something out. It was exclusionary back then. You couldn't get your hands on the right tools because you had to have a white lab coat and some pens and a slide rule. And it's also gone through that repetition again with the unicorny sort of data scientists, like, ooh, you can't go in that direction. We put up walls too often. So Roman, shame on you. I totally disagree.
I was trying to make a point that, your old style dashboard that runs 9 to 5 p.m. is not going to make it. That's not a solution.
Yeah, it's look, I'm with Roman on the, it's, you gotta build it for scale. And sometimes the business, it's easy to get something working fast, but to keep it working and to grow it is where things get to be pretty tricky and people get into trouble. But I'm with you, Sean, that I think both parties need to be at the table. Otherwise, someone's going to be unhappy And the business chooses the tool, IT doesn't want to support it, and they'll complain about it. If IT chooses the tool, the business is going to look to IT and say, you guys don't know what you're doing. So it's definitely needs to be joint, in my opinion. Anybody have any other?
David. Another point today in terms of selection is the flexibility in terms of where you want to deploy the solution. Today, you even have vendors who are basically giving their analytical capability in the form of a microservice, right? That level of flexibility, it can be their own cloud hosting, it should be available on third-party clouds, hybrid clouds, and more what we're looking at, we are getting these demands from the market that they want the entire analytical capability as a microservice, right? Some of the components, some of the functionalities that we have, and just the whole system, they want it as a microservice. So having that, and also Roman brought up a very important point, security and compliance, right? Yeah, everything is cloud, but then you have so many different things that you have to look at. You have to look at GDPR, you have to look at the California Data Protection Act. There's so many things that you have to look at from a governance perspective as well when you make these decisions about a BI platform, because that's where you're going to, again, you will never, I'm someone who believes you can never get to a single source of truth. I think it's too much, but then I know that's the holy grail as far as everybody on this call is concerned. Would love to be great to have that, but then that's never going to happen with so many business applications, so many sources of data that we are looking at. But then once the minute you start accumulating data, then you're looking at governance, then you're looking at making data available to the right people at the right time. And I think those are also other aspects that needs to be considered, and how flexible is the platform or the vendor that you're dealing with.
Great. Yeah, look, I heard some comments in some of your responses about just embedded analytics, and about how it's really about ease of use and sort of lowering the bar for people to consume analytics. And along that line, and I think, Charles, you talked about the maturity of your user base. There's been a lot of talk recently about data literacy, and we see some of our customers running data literacy programs within their organizations. What's your view? What's the panel's view of data literacy and what we're seeing there? Is this something real, sustained, or a fad?
I think it's consistent with what has been said at the beginning. Is data literacy. It's how you bring data skills, data understanding to the vast audience, to the majority of your company, and not some happy few that have been trained to use highly technical solutions. So data literacy is how you increase that level of knowledge, awareness around data, around definition, around computation, around single source of truth. So for me, it's really a true thing that is very important as a trend, same as democratization of analytics and insight and agile citizen development, same as composability and reusability. So data literacy is a thing, and you can see it's a thing because you see all the big players, TIBCO, Power BI, Click, all those big players have in some sense have integrated that into their marketing, just to say that they are here to enable data literacy inside the vast organization.
Yeah, from my perspective, data literacy doesn't mean that we turn everyone into data analyst. It's actually the opposite. And for me, the best example of data, for me, data literacy is essentially to teach people to trust data and have trust in the context of data. We had an example of that, that margin. If I don't trust it, no data literacy will actually help me. And my favorite example of a kind of a embedded and kind of democratized data is the front page of or the key page of Uber. We go to when we go to Uber, we see all the cars and we see how it's being kind of structured, and we see all the metrics and when it's going to come. So Uber is turning all of us into logistical experts with no need to training, and so on. All we need to trust the data and understand the context. And that's kind of where I see the embedded analytics going, is that we'll turn people into experts in their field with data without actually need to turn everyone into an analyst. But we have to trust the data. And ultimately, all 6 of us, we are essentially in the business of contextualization of data.
Mm-hmm.
Beautifully put, Norman. Beautifully put. I'll say the whole idea of literacy is trusting data. And then, data literacy is a much bigger, fish to fry. Technically, it's just trusting the data, just giving them the data, and for them to be able to take decisions based on that data. That's the first thing. So in that context, what I'm seeing is more and more for the line of business, or the who I call the frontline workers in the business. They don't have access to data. Now, even if you give them access to data, they don't know what to do with it. I think a simple things like explaining what that data is, or some kind of a natural language generation, again, driven by AI and all those kind of interesting things, I think we can push that literacy. But truly, I think the trusting of data is so important. And if you really take, the whole data literacy within the organization, where do you start? Is it the decision makers who first need to be made literate, or is it the line of business user who is sitting and doing the operational work on a daily basis? I think that's more almost like a change management within an organization. If you're trying to tackle data literacy as a problem within an organization, if you're not there, too bad. But then I think with some of the technologies and tools, I think there are simple things that we can enable, and context, explaining what's going on with the data. These are very simple things that, thanks to technology, we can do. Thanks to ML and AI, we are able to do it. I think these are also starting points that systems should natively start supporting and helping business users to be able to trust data. Otherwise, again, just giving a dashboard and they have to drill down and explore data. Trust me, it's a fatigue. I mean, I've been doing this for close to a decade with real-time data. It's boring. But now if I can look at a report and say, hey, your data trend is showing that your leads are, your quality of leads is going down. If I'm able to trust that data, that's great. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to be able to take some action based on that. So at the end of the day, literacy means, yeah, I need to be able to get some insights, but at the same time, insights without action or non-actionable insights are of no consequence anyway. So I think there are a lot of things when you look at data literacy as a challenge within an organization. There's so many layers to it. And I totally agree with the whole idea of trusting, because no matter what beautiful KPI metrics and dashboard you show them, if they don't trust you, then I think it's a losing battle at that point.
I take a contrarian approach, partly because Sean put the seed of conflict in my head. But in all seriousness, I think it's one thing to trust data, and I think that's very important. But I also think it's a fairly romanticized notion. I take the words of one of our former presidents: trust but verify, and that's where I think some of the data literacy aspects comes into place. Let me give you an example. Right back a long time ago, in one of my earlier careers, when I was working for a financial services firm, we were doing a lot of work around how ETF products are actually sold by financial agents. Now, when the initial conclusions were made, they were based on data sourced, and conclusions were taken from that, and certain decisions were being made on the kinds of ETF packages that could be recommended for certain kind of financial advisors. Makes perfect sense. Now, if you trusted the data on the face of it, you would trust the conclusions that came out of that as well. But what you did not know that wasn't verified was that none of the data was actually sampled. So which means, the conclusions that you draw out of it were completely unrepresentative. My point being here is that if you trust the data, you better make sure that the data was actually collected in the spirit of the kinds of statistical best practices that it was collected under. So to me, it's not just a question of trusting the data, it's actually trusting all the underlying principles that led to the data, which then was used to make certain conclusions from which the insights came out of. I think to me that's a little bit important as well.
There's an interesting detail that you bring up, Sri, but more of a question to you. Is that not something as a part of your BI practice, you would manage the data, collect the data, cleanse the data, and then make it for analysis? So if you're going through those hoops and then you have those guardrails in place, even then, trust but verify, totally, yes, I totally agree with it. But then the fact that we are going through that process before the data becomes consumable for analytics at the analytics layer, I think there are guardrails that we are doing now. Again, 20 years ago, probably we're not doing it, but then now I see that, again, what I've seen in the industry, like 5 years ago, you had to go to IT teams to do data preparation. Today, you have self-service data preparation, and the line of business users are operating on their data, and then they're doing things like sentiment analysis on the data, and then taking it for, doing things like analyze the sentiment on textual data before they take it for analysis and figure out which top product do they have in their e-commerce store that has the most positive sentiment. So that's also changing. So in that context, what would you say? Data literacy context where you have guardrails.
I agree with you. I think there are two parts to it, right? One is, of course, data literacy, where you speak solely of the data and all the guardrails that go into being able to create the kinds of data sources in a proper manner that lends itself to downstream analytics. The second part of that literacy, I think sometimes we don't go into deeper, is analytics literacy, meaning that, why would you choose one particular algorithm versus the other? Or when is statistical sampling important? When is representativeness making a difference? What kind of conclusions you can draw? I think those two are interrelated, and sometimes are actually divorced from each other as well, depending on how you look at it. But to me, literacy comprises these two parts to it. When do you pick the kinds of data and manipulations to the data that goes in the analytics, and what kinds of analytics you have to put in place, and how do you know the difference? What's the difference between simple things like logistic versus linear modeling? Sometimes these things make a difference, and you just can't substitute one versus the other just because it ends up in a classification. Those are the kind of things I'm referring to when it comes to literacy.
It's an interesting quote. It's when I think about BI and Hadoop and all that confusion, all of that we created in the last 10 years, different quote comes to my mind. And it's if you cannot convince them, you have to confuse them. That's also from another, US president. And I think that's the problem that this industry has, is that we are not in business of convincing people. We are in business of confusing people with new concepts all the time. But the one I like, and I think Dave is kind of a pioneer of that one, is the whole concept of a semantic model and semantic modeling. That's the contextualization of the data that we are talking about, Dave. Is that the biggest innovation that you see?
Look, I spent the last 8 years working on it, so I feel pretty passionate about it. That's for sure. But this is all. You kind of hit up on something, and I wanted to just sort of finish up our the few minutes left, and really get you guys' opinions on this, because look, we're all in the business of selling and selling analytics and proving and trying to prove that it's value. And Roman, you hit it right. It's like we've been doing a lot of confusing instead of convincing. So how do we and how do our customers prove ROI for the investment that they're making in the tools that we're selling? I just want to pull the panel on that.
No one wants to start because the answer's too broad. It's really dependent upon use case and where you're at and what you're trying to accomplish. I think it goes hand in hand with any new project around analytics in general. I think companies have gotten smart enough to ask that question up front. We've all been kind of teasing around about, confusing things in the industry. I call them BSTTs, bright, shiny tech toys. And if you lead with a BSTT when you walk in and see a company and they smell that, you're not going to get very far. So I think a lot of us, all of us as vendors, I think have gotten away from leading with the new bright, shiny tech toy and trying to get closer to real world problems. And I'll make a point I was going to make earlier. I think that BI and analytics earned its stripes in 2007, 2008, when we had an economic downturn and the companies that weren't analytically fit failed. And the ones that were more competitive, found the extra couple points of margin, found the extra couple, sales dollar, whatever it was. And analytics drove that. And so I really think that was a kind of a pillar around ROI. People saw it then, and now it's kind of carried through. And we've touched on some of the big ROI topics: context, time to value, making decisions at the speed of your business. If those things are involved in the projects you're doing, ROI is not too hard to find.
Well, anybody else have a closing comment on this?
To me, it's
Sure.
about the business outcome.
It's how do you define R in ROI? It can be customer satisfaction. It doesn't need to be
Exactly.
monetary in BI. It can be actually something else.
Agreed.
Very good.
And
Yeah.
I think just one thing that I want to talk about was how we are in the business of doing BI, and then we're confusing them, and we don't have the right analysis to tell them, hey, here's the insight, take this insight, go run with it. No, we're confusing them. True. I mean, so much we have seen from Hadoop to R to graph databases and JSON databases. It's not easy being trying to make decisions for an organization about how you manage data. It's a big game.
Hi, gentlemen. I wanted to pop back in here as we're nearing the end of the hour, but a great discussion so far, and I especially appreciate some of those polite conflicts and disagreements. I think we got a lot of good information here. We had actually a comment that just came in from LinkedIn. Larry wanted to know, what was the name of the model just mentioned that Dave specialized in? This was only a couple minutes ago, Dave.
Oh, a semantic layer. So it's a semantic model. So a logical layer that sits between consumption and your data platforms independently. Yeah, and that's what we do at Scale is that we sell a semantic layer platform. So learned over the years that if you embed the semantic layer in the consumption tool, the BI tool, for example, or even the Jupyter Notebook, you don't have a semantic layer. You have multiple semantic layers. So our innovation was really decoupling it, separating it, and making that the sole hub for your source of business truth, and to make data more business friendly, which means more people can make decisions and make data-driven decisions.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that clarification. I wanted to quickly just kind of prompt our final thoughts here. So Dave, you just spoke, so let's start at the other end with Charles. Just final thoughts, or maybe any place you'd like to send the audience after this panel is over, if you want to promote your solution or just promote an idea. Take us away. Charles.
Yeah, I can start. I would say I would encourage the audience to look at the most up-to-date research on Gartner, Forrester, and other analysts. I think they cover very well our space and its evolution. And then, I think that's have a good reading.
Thank you, Roman.
Yeah, from my perspective, I agree with Dave that semantic model is kind of a true innovation in analytics, and it needs to be decoupled. I think it's only half of the story, and that's at Good Data we see it more balanced. We see semantic model as the kind of what essentially hides the complexity of the data platform, but on the other hand, we also see need for that composable low-code, no-code tool, that a platform that allows people to build new insights. So semantic model with ability to build insights is kind of limited. So I would send people to Good Data to see how semantic model can be linked with composable analytics.
Right on. Thank you very much. LSP.
Go take a look at each and every vendor's offering here, because everybody has been in the business for decades doing the research and development that we have all done. And yeah, you name it, you want embedded analytics, you got it. You got self-service, no-code, connectors to business applications, got it. You're looking at data warehouse, you're looking at semantic model. Just look at all the vendors who are on this call. Truly, there's so much that has gone in, and it's been a pleasure to be a part of this panel. John, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Sean, how about you?
Gosh, the same thing. Pleasure to be on the panel. Looking at the tenure that we all brought to this discussion, it was fun to listen to, and it's always great to hear from what everybody's saying. And yeah, the vendor community has matured a lot. There's fantastic things out there. If you want to look at me corporately, there's tipco.com. Personally, Sean Raj on Twitter, and I share a lot of content just about analytics and BI. And thanks for having me. This was fun. And Roman, thank you for letting me disagree with you.
Well, thank you.
Shri, how about you?
Hey, I have a tremendous amount of respect for all of you today I learned a lot. And my personal thanks to all of you for making this happen. We at Teradata are passionate about analytics. We have an analytics platform. It's called Vantage. It's a multi-cloud platform. And the idea encapsulates a lot of things we talked about today: ecosystem extensibility, analytics operationalization, time to insight. These are the kinds of things that we bring to the table. Check it out at teradata.com. The solution is Vantage. Again, it is an honor to be part of this great group of people. I thank you very much for how much learnings I got from you today.
All right, and Dave.
Hey, thanks to the whole panel. I echo that. I'll just leave you with one thing. It's much easier to teach a subject matter expert how to use data than it is to teach a data engineer about the business. And so it's all about ease of use and usability and making analytics available to everyone to make data-driven decisions. So I think everybody on this panel is in the business to do just that. And that's what I'm so excited about today, and then what our future is.
Thank you very much. And with that, I would like to thank our group of panelists again for their time and you for your attention. If you came in late or missed any portion of this discussion, you can rewatch the entire broadcast anytime at youtube.com/solutionsreview. And please stay tuned for the wrapping up of Insight Jam this week. This is our final live event, but we will have a little bit more coverage on Twitter and LinkedIn, so stay tuned for that. And stay tuned next December. We'll be back for the 4th annual Insight Jam in just a year, and I'm sure we might have a couple of repeat panelists by then. Until that time, though, I want to bring in the group one more time just to say thank you again for your time, gentlemen. It has been a pleasure. Have a great afternoon, and thank you for watching.
Thanks,
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Bye.
Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.